Okay, we'll go ahead and kick us off. I know it is spring break for a lot of districts around the state, so we are very grateful for those of you who are spending your time with us, especially if you're on spring break right now. But today we are celebrating National AI Literacy Day, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that effort is, what it entails. And for the most part, you're going to be hearing from folks who are leading AI literacy efforts on the ground in schools, in school districts. So I'm going to try to keep my comments relatively brief so we can hear more of the practical examples and some of the amazing work. And you can see our title here is celebrating the successes that we're seeing here in the state to build AI literacy among our staff and among our students. My name is Justin Bruno. I'm an AI strategist for Michigan Virtual. Talk a little bit more about what we do at Michigan Virtual around AI and some of the work that I've been able to participate in. But like I mentioned earlier, the bulk of the comments you're going to be hearing today are from our panelists and our presenters. So, if you are interested in a little bit more about what we're doing here at Michigan Virtual, we'll be sharing that and then some contact information for you if you're interested in keeping in touch. What the hour is going to look like, basically what we're doing now, just some welcoming, some introduction, and then an overview about what this is, what National AI Literacy Day is, how it's come to be. I'll talk a little bit, like I mentioned, about what the work we're doing in AI, around AI at Michigan Virtual. And then we're going to hear from, like I mentioned, some amazing presenters and panelists from Oakland schools, Avondale, and Ottawa area ISD. So at the end of our session, we will leave some time for questions. So if you have a question as folks are presenting, feel free to use either the Q&A tool here in Zoom or pose those questions in Zoom. I and another one of my counterparts here in Michigan Virtual will be monitoring the chat and making sure that your questions get read and answered. So without further ado, let's kick us off. If you have not heard of National AI Literacy Day, this is now the second annual National AI Literacy Day, and you can read a little bit more about the effort at ailiteracyday.org. But in an essence, it is an event meant to bring folks together and answer a really big question. What is AI, right? AI has become a huge buzzword over the last few years in education, in business, across society as a whole. It seems like every day we see a new advancement when it comes to an AI technology or a new study being published about how AI is impacting our work, our society, our world. And this is an effort to kind of set more of a foundational conversation once a year and explore this big question. What is AI? How should we be interacting with AI? And what are the sorts of things that we need to be kind of taking as mindsets as we embrace AI or choose not to embrace AI in education specifically, because that's our charge and that's where our panelists and our presenters are coming from. Couple or a few different national organizations are leading this effort: EdSafe AI, Common Sense Media, AI EDU, and the Tech Interactive. So if you have some familiarity with any of those groups, you'll know that they put out high quality work, research-backed work. On the website at ailiteracyday.org, there are lots and lots of great resources, including curriculum and lesson plans. There are links to other professional development opportunities and professional learning resources, including the one that we're having here today. There are links to different communities that folks can be a part of across the entire country, and just kind of building a network, a national network to kind of facilitate really intentional and in-depth conversations about this technology and, like I mentioned, how it's impacting us today. So we thank you for being here and thank you for being a part of the conversation. And like I mentioned, we're going to hear from some folks who are really invested in this work and are doing some amazing work to help others answer this question. What is AI? Um, AI literacy has been kind of an attached buzzword to the idea of AI over the last couple of years, but there are a few different organizations who have different definitions. You'll hear folks say things like AI fluency, AI skills. This event, National AI Literacy Day, is really focused on AI literacy, and there are a couple different organizations that have set out some definitions. You'll see those here on the screen here, but they basically kind of boil down to this idea of the ability of us as a human to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems. So understand how these things work, what sorts of mechanics go into AI technologies as they're created and as they're used, to be able to use them, or again, choose not to use them for our own ends or toward our own goals, and then evaluate those outputs and evaluate those systems so that we can just be more critical consumers, or maybe even critical creators with our creators of AI technology. So if you're interested in some of the AI literacy resources, kind of more broad frameworks, Digital Promise, Teach AI, I mentioned the groups earlier, AI EDU and Common Sense Media, they all have great thinking and resources and research around this really broad topic of understanding, using, and evaluating AI systems. If you're not familiar with us at Michigan Virtual, we are a state-funded nonprofit. You can see here what our kind of mission, vision, and values are. I won't read those. Our strategic priorities fall into three buckets. We're trying to drive educational change. We know that this time in our history is rife with change, and we see sometimes a need for education to keep up with that pace of change, or at least to be able to understand enough about where they should keep up, where education should keep up with that pace of change. And so that's one of our top strategic priorities. Broadening student pathways, giving them more access to learning opportunities in different modalities, and then powering professional learning, empowering our professionals, our educators who are in the field and helping make those opportunities a reality for our learners. So mentioned state-funded nonprofit, and we are also now home to what we are calling the AI Lab, which has been around now for, I want to say, close to 18 months. Because we're state funded, we are written into state legislation in terms of what we are to do with that state funding. And this is directly from that state legislation. We are to serve as an AI lab and serve as a hub for research, best practices, experimentation, policy development, and raising awareness about the responsible utilization of AI in schools. So I, in the role of AI strategist, I am working with schools, kind of trying to meet them, school districts, wherever they are. They may be on the very beginning of this exploratory journey, just learning about what AI is. So that might look like foundational training. They might be interested in developing their own policies. They might be interested in working with stakeholders like their community, their school boards, et cetera, to try to figure out what their philosophies and approaches to AI should be, what tools they should adopt, or what risks they should be mitigating against when it comes to AI. So it's a really, really big scope of work because AI is a general purpose technology. And we try to, again, work with those school districts wherever they are. You can see here on the slides, there's an overview about what we've been able to accomplish over the last couple years. We host an AI summit in December every year. We facilitate professional learning, both in person and online. We are now hosting our second AI Literacy Day webinar. We facilitate an AI work group, which is comprised of folks from different education organizations from all over the state. So if you're interested, again, in any more of that work that we're doing to facilitate communities, networks, to develop resources, to work one-on-one with school districts and professionals, you can read all about that at michiganvirtual.org/AI. Did just want to give a shout out in case any of the districts that we work with in kind of longer term engagements are on the call. You can see here we're working with a couple different ISDs, Livingston ESA and St. Clair County RISA, to kind of set a countywide agenda for serving their schools all across the county when it comes to all those things that I mentioned earlier. When it comes to AI, working with school districts, again, to develop policy, to just build professional knowledge, build professional learning. I really love the work that's happening in Ann Arbor. They are using students to inform their policies. So they have student-centered work groups or student-led work groups to think about how AI should be adopted across the district there. So did just want to give a shout out to those districts who are not presenting, but are at least we know are doing some amazing stuff today. And you can see here just one quick kind of to put a bow on all of this. What is the activity looking like at these districts who are trying to push for AI literacy? if you're really at that initiating stage, you're holding awareness sessions, you're maybe forming that advisory committee or that team, you're starting to think about policies or guidelines. And then as you go through this cycle, you're starting to take more action. So you're having PD sessions, you are adapting your assessment strategies, which we know has been a huge concern especially at the secondary level. How do we have what we think of as authentic assessment in an age of AI, now that AI can do most of the assessments that we've historically given in our schools? How do we evaluate that work? Or sorry, how do we engage our community, our stakeholders in that work? Are we providing ongoing training? And you're going to hear from our presenters today, how are we like actually teaching students about AI to develop that skill of AI literacy? We've got some resources, we've got some amazing examples to show you here today. And then like any process, you go through a phase of evaluation and seeing what's working and what's not. So that's a little bit about the process that we try to take with districts that we're working with. I know there are a few things in the chat. I am going to now just turn it over to our presenters. So with us, we have Andrea Zeldner, Learning Design Consultant from Oakland Schools, Michelle Gearman, AI Consultant Education Coordinator from Avondale School District, and Dave Tebow, who's the Director of Innovation Services at Ottawa Area ISD. And you're going to hear all about, like I mentioned, the amazing things that they're doing in their districts to develop AI literacy with their stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will allow our first presenter to take over.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to be here with you and all these brilliant folks. So I'm here today to talk about AI literacy through action. This was a half-baked idea that we are piloting right now. And so we thought about approaching AI literacies through project-based learning. And just to situate us, I'm in Oakland County and I serve all 28 school districts in the county. And so that gives me an opportunity to work with lots of different communities, everywhere from very rural communities to very urban communities. And we have an incredible cross section of educators who are doing this in their classrooms right now, except for they're on spring break this week, but they're working on it. So the question that we're engaging with is how might we influence the way generative AI is designed and used in our school community? So similarly to what Ann Arbor is doing, really centering the student experience with AI first and building AI literacies through the interrogation of this question. This unit is grounded in the UNESCO AI competencies for students. I am a former English teacher, and my approach to literacies really is civically situated and communally situated. So, meaning that when we're seeking to read, write, communicate, that we are doing that within the context of our communities. And in the United States, at least, we are working with the ways that we engage as citizens. And so, when we are digging into literacies, we are thinking about the way that whatever tool we're looking at, whether it's a pencil or ChatGPT, that we are looking at the ways that they are communally and civically situated. So UNESCO also holds those same values, and these AI competencies are really great. So we're using in this pilot writingpartners.net. And so you can see an example of how we dug into the UNESCO AI competencies in the chat. And as you see, it starts with a very human-centered mindset. There's been recent studies that have shown that folks with low levels of AI literacies approach AI with this sort of starry-eyed magic approach. And we even use the metaphors of magic when it comes to AI. And building AI literacies means being a little bit critical about what's behind it and what's going on here. So we center the human agency, accountability, and citizenship in the AI era. And that's really where we're starting. And then moving into ethics and then working into techniques and applications and system design. So that's sort of the hierarchy, although I think that they're pretty fluid and moving back and forth as we dig in. So the way that the project is working is we start with a project launch where we show the kids the question and let them know that they will be meeting with the stakeholders in their school community to advocate for a certain approach to generative AI. No matter where they're starting, we're going to work through this. And this is an argumentative writing unit as well. So the kids are also taking up their own opinions. As they move through the design of the project, They actually start by designing an AI, just paper prototyping. It comes from the People's Guide to AI. And we also investigate why we write. What is the human purposes for writing? Why are we doing that? And how does that differ from the text generation that an AI system might be doing, or a large language model? We also engage in constructive controversy, which I think some of you have done with me before. We also talk about the ethics of AI, corroborating what they're saying, that we're playing around, playing with citation as well, and digging into writing partners, which invites students to create their own AI thinking partners through the use of the site. And so we have everything from like the Bob Ross bot, who's telling you about happy little accidents, to Taylor Swift lyrics coming through in the writing critique. And then finally, through that designing of a writing partner and investigating mentor texts, like what we have developed here at Oakland Schools and things that we've seen around our county, we are going to build our own guidance for our community. And so that is already happening. So we have AI task forces already on the calendar, set up time with these groups of students who are working. So I wanted to also give you the AI discussion cards. This is how we start. And so the discussion cards are a really nice way to begin the conversation, because these are really interesting and provocative images and questions. And when you click on them, so let me pull them up, they work so that you can click on the picture and then you have these questions to guide your thinking. So the kids are just in a conversation, or they can join a Padlet and do a sort with these and kind of make their own categories. So this is how we begin the conversation. And then the students start to move into building their own thinking around AI with these provocative ideas and questions. My favorite, of course, because I'm clicking on the wrong thing. My favorite, because I'm an English teacher, and I'm just going to show you real quickly, is this poem about a student who used AI to write a paper. And I love it, especially working with English teachers, because it talks about love in here and how we might love what we work and what is more human than love. So I just love digging into all this stuff and wondering about it. Some of the other ways that we've gone about building capacity around AI is through a couple other initiatives that we have running in the county right now. And all of these really anchor in community values and our strengths. So, for example, when I first started pushing into the AI, like most of the people probably on this call, we were just kind of like, hey, what's this thing that's happening? It just arrived, and now we've got to figure something out. So I always joke I'm like 2 seconds ahead of everybody else, and that's it. That's as far as you can actually get, is 2 seconds ahead. So I was getting asked a lot to like, will you come to the social studies group, and will you come to the math group, and all of these requests. And I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we joined together the folks that had some of these deeper understandings of what AI can do and are content area experts, and come together with different focus each week. And so we've run the series. We've had 18 different sessions, everything from social work, I think Steve Whitmore is in the chat, to data sense making, to fine arts, or early childhood, hour-long webinars. We record them, we post them, and we share them. The other thing that we've done is a lot of work around building guidance or engaging with task forces. So the first one we had was with Birmingham, that you can see on here. And through that work, we ended up pulling together a task force, and I see many members of that Oakland Schools task force in the webinar as well. And we built some sample guidance for schools, and we are anchoring our work around that. From there, we also built a rubric that can help folks prioritize what might need to be happening with their work. And I'm proud to say in all of those documents, they center the student's voice. Every single one of that bits and bobs of work center student voice, center what students are doing, because really that's who we're interested in. And I just love the ways that we can build community and name what our values are in order to drive the conversation around generative AI. I'll leave you with a thought that I've been having a lot about AI, which is thinking about precise terms. English teachers love precise terms, so I'm going to give you one. I just saw an article where they suggested that we use the term salami instead of AI. And I'm going to have to look it up because I can't remember. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. But salami instead of AI stands for systemic approaches to learning algorithms and machine inferences. Okay, so that's what salami stands for. And it's kind of interesting to swap in salami for AI because you start to say, will salami have emotions? And it just sounds sort of silly. Can you possibly fall in love with salami? And I think what it pushes on is the way that literacies can make visible the way things are maybe hidden. And what UNESCO's AI competencies invite us to do is to push back on some of the rhetoric that we're seeing from the vendors and from the tech companies that want us to have a certain image of AI, which is why we're getting magic wands and other ways that we're other metaphors for AI. And so I just offer to you the salami approach as you go forth with students because it really does help us see in a critical way what's happening and how we might engage in a truly digitally literate way with generative AI. And with that, I will turn it over to Michelle.
Sorry there, I'm here now. Thank you, Andrea. Andrea's been a great help to me as Avondale Schools is part of Oakland Schools. So thank you for everything that you have done. I'm going to go ahead and share the slides. All right, so I am going to leave it in this mode just because I can click on things and I think it'll be a little bit easier for me to have some visuals while I talk. So I am Michelle Gearman and I'm honored to be here with everybody today. I'm a lifelong learner and so I fell in love with this whole journey with AI for the fact that you can learn something new every minute, as she said. You can only be a couple seconds ahead of other people. And that makes it such collaborative work, which I also really enjoy. And my background, I've taught third grade through, I was a college instructor for 6 years, anything from composition to poetry to semiotics. And I came over to Avondale really for their open-minded leadership. So that has been a big part of what has made things successful. I came to them to start the Gifted Magnet School almost a decade ago. And then that was doing very well and wanted to bring some differentiation and things like that out into all the buildings and wanted to merge that with AI because bringing differentiation and universal design learning to new teachers or to areas where it hadn't quite fully developed yet is hard work for teachers. And so I noticed AI was really adding so much efficiency. And once again, being the yes man that he is, our superintendent said, yeah, let's do this. And so I asked to seek some PD and they were very supportive. So just a little background on some of the amazing people here who helped with that as well. Can you guys see when I click on the new page? Great. So cognitive coaching, of course, being any kind of a leader in a district, just knowing how to empower people and draw out the ideas that they already have inside of them was a big start to being successful in other areas. And so there wasn't much out there when I very first was interested because students said, Spearman, Spearman, I gotta show you something. Don't tell anybody. And they showed me. I learned that this existed from students. And so I just thought, to find out more. And then Oakland Schools, all the way back in summer 2023, they had their AI summits, and I learned about prompts, ethics, philosophy, strategy in such an organized way. I was so excited. And merged that with, of course, I'm the advocacy chair for the Michigan Association of Gifted Children. And so to hear from them, like they were excited about how AI can help exceptional students and on and on. Michigan Virtual had their MASA Summer AI Leadership Academy, which was great because then I was looking at a big picture, like multimodal program design, book studies, of course, more conferences. Recently, McCall, which I saw some friends that are here there as well. Hello to my McCall friends. And so it's been great. And more recently, I'm working with Michigan Virtual and REMC on differentiating with AI in a subcommittee and the Michigan Virtual AI Steering Committee. So that's exciting. When I very first was bringing the knowledge I was kind of seeking out there to my district, I really just came in with trust and unity. It was really scary for people. I could feel the anxiety. And I also do trauma-informed yoga. So starting with those shared experiences, people cried sometimes when we would just engage in yoga and how are we feeling? The world is changing. And so it really just brought us together. And it helped me stay empathetic because I was empowered through my learning and people who weren't yet, I couldn't talk all excited about this thing that I knew about because not knowing about something is fearful. So just listening and creating a place of safety is a great place to start. And happily, it was a slow process, but we're in a place now where teachers let me come in. And when they're starting out, sometimes I just go in and model, like using AI with students as with AI as a thought partner. And once I built that trust, because they don't have time, they're overwhelmed. And so, hey, sure, I'll invite you in. I've heard you're doing things. I think we trust you. Come in, show me. So I just come in and work with students with AI as thought partners in a way that's for Bacopa approved, monitored, and so they see it and they go, "Oh wow, look at my kids are engaged." And they see different things. So now I've had teachers that PLCs and other leaders teaching each other, which makes it just wonderful. And so right now, like deciding on a tool to kind of, you don't want to limit people, but if you have a tool that's um, pretty versatile that people can gather around is nice. So for me, Magic School was that tool. I just introduced so many tools in the beginning with groups and had some focus groups, and people kept gravitating towards it. And I was looking at our usage percentages. Definitely partnering with your AI tool representatives is great. I talk to them quite often, like, hey, I was able to break it this way, or, it's great to have those strong partnerships with them. And so now we're at a place where we have a tool that's definitely our most used currently. Of course, that could change. And they have great resources. I also have created some. I know you'll have these. This is for the upcoming M step. Just really great way to use Magic School and not test prep, but engaging in things that lend themselves to comfortability with that test when students take it and also just lead to good learning anyways. And so just gosh, the student success that I see being in the classrooms with my work is amazing. Watching teachers just light up with like new excitement, but it's definitely when they're comfortable and when they've learned and when they've had some time to really see them blossom and start to teach others is my favorite thing. I had one story, a student, he is in third grade and he cannot yet read, and he is just wonderful to talk to. He has so much empathy and critical thinking and verbally adds so much, but he shies away and excludes himself. And with the use of chatbots, he's able to go and have a conversation, and he is able to use text to speech and use his headphones to listen. So he is able to have a thought partner and he doesn't feel intimidated. And he started joining the academic conversation, and that made him hungry. So now in his phonics work with the science of reading and other things for literacy, he's like so on fire. He wants to be a part of every academic conversation. And it made me cry because I was so excited. So those things really do matter and really mean a lot. And then just sharing, just being really connected. I try to send newsletters monthly or bi-monthly, Notebook LM podcast included. They can look through all the pictures of what are my teacher friends doing in our district. Oh, I'm going to talk to this person at that building. I want to know how they did that. Or they can listen to the podcast on the way home. And I just shout out, what are our amazing teachers doing? What things have I seen among these students? And so, I also really, like, wanna make sure I'm really hearing the concerns, and so there's that, like, we're taking humanity out of things. We're hurting the earth with AI, it's wasting water and things of that nature, and so, I love my student focus groups, I love my adult focus groups to just kind of bounce ideas. And these environmental AI projects have been wonderful. Asking AI, how can you do better to be better to the earth? AI is fun. We've got our green spaces project underway. Some of my students won some grant money because they were really passionate about saving Eastern Mississauga rattlesnakes, and they've used some AI in some of their planning. We have an Innovation Day coming up centered around AI helping the world, especially the environment. So just rallying around good causes with AI because there's something in it that does feel like it's taking away something human. And there's something about it that feels a little clerical or a little bit scary, right? And so if we can think of it as a thought partner that cares about the earth and really we are in control of it. So if we can shape it that way, that's great. And students don't always know what is AI. So that AI literacy piece is important And when they know what it is and they know, hey, it's how I interact with it is what changes what it is more than anything. So just focusing on the empathy and ethics. And so our collaborative impact and partnerships has just been amazing. Like I said, Michigan Virtual, their summer program that they had about just strategic planning for a whole district was really helpful. Oakland Schools continues with their generative AI series. And through them, I've met with other districts. So through Oakland Schools now partnering with Birmingham, their high school NHS students are going to speak to our student middle school focus groups about what, because they worked with Oakland Schools before we did. And so just a little bit about the bumps and the successes and any advice they might have. And then that's going to be, I'm excited for that. Clarkston wanted to partner, and I got to match up with them because Oakland Schools put on their networking opportunity. Northville, I'm going to chat with them soon a little more. They're using Snorkel a bit more. So I can't say enough about the importance of just having that partnership among as many communities as possible. And so our task force, really, we have a lot of data between collaborative reflections with partnerships of all kinds, primary and secondary research. I love to do listening sessions. I just sit in the lunchroom at schools, different buildings, or after school. Just recently, Oakland Schools helped me with a Qualtrics survey that got a lot of good qualitative and quantitative data, Zooming with the AI task force. And so we are thinking about that portrait of a graduate with AI safety and ethics and career in mind, our literacy scaffolding across the grades, and then just making sure that we're out there with our best practices, myself and like the way bigger, way more powerful PLCs and other building leaders that are now using it and sharing with each other. Like that is huge. And so we're working on now our color coded transparency posters so that we can all be on the same page, teachers, students, admin, parents, like an infographic that can be versatile and say, here's what this is. Whether you have a language barrier or what grade you're in, you can say, oh, this is how we easily, precise terms, Andrea, yes, tell each other, well, how are we using AI in this? Where's the student agency? Where's the teacher's expectations? And just addressing misconduct with restorative practices. Students are scared too. They're scared of getting caught doing something wrong, and they don't necessarily want to. And one teacher says, using AI is great, use it for everything. You have to, it's the way of the future. You're not going to get hired. And another says, if you use it, I will catch you. And that's valid. Those are different levels of experience from those educators. It's valid for them to feel that way as long as they have their expectations clear. But for students, just imagine how difficult that can be. So I'm so thankful for my partnership, so thankful. And thankful for all of you who took a Friday morning, possibly your spring break, and it's nice out to be with us today. So thank you. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and stop, turn it over.
All right, thank you, Michelle. I'm Dave Tebow, the Director of Innovation Services here at the Ottawa Area ISD, and I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see what I've got up? Perfect. So as the Director of Innovation Services here, one of the things that we really feel strongly on is that innovation isn't something that you do with. And AI is one of the big innovations, obviously, that is hitting what we're doing. And so we came at this from an ISD. One, we have center-based programs that we run, our tech center, some of our center-based programs here in the county. And so we have a staff of teachers that we want to support and empower as they work with our kids. But then we also, as a service provider to other locals, are meeting them where they are. And so we are trying to be very intentional in our path to supporting all of our teachers. We have started this work at the ISD. We have an AI advisory steering team. We're using the Michigan Virtual Framework to guide us. We've worked through the leadership and vision, policy, ethical, and legal considerations. We're at the spot now that we're looking at instructional frameworks, learning assessment, student use, and then using that to drive the professional development that our teachers and our staff needs. So we are supporting our locals in a number of different ways. I've created what I use as a kind of an AI journey map. I haven't turned that over to the districts yet, but when I meet with district leadership, we kind of just take an assessment of where they are, what's going on. We have districts here in Ottawa County that are all over the board, from districts who have opened up AI tools, unfettered, to their students and their teachers. And we have districts that are still completely locked down and AI empowered tools are on the block list. So all of those are okay. And we need to meet them and work with them where they are. And so we're doing that through a journey map. We'll talk a little bit here in a minute about some work that I did with Holland Public Schools, because I think this is kind of really a key to the work that we're doing. As we look at the work that we're doing, we started with just a general awareness. I think you've heard that from Andrea as well. And it's just, what is AI? What is generative intelligence, and what does this bring to the conversation? So we've run learning labs for principals. We've worked with different districts. I have a series of AI 101, which is a general understanding of what it is. We've started a 201 series in which we take a deeper dive and we look at what are we doing with assessment, what does that mean for students, and we've used a number of those different pieces to just support the different districts where they are. I think one of the keys in all of this is knowing what else is out there, who is out there to collaborate with. Michelle had talked a little bit about that from the PLC standpoint. How are we connecting teachers who are starting to do this work with other teachers so that they can support each other? And we've customized a number of different things to make that work here locally in Ottawa ISD. But one of the things I want to really highlight is a project that we did where we had AI empowered student design. So Holland Public Schools passed a bond. They're in the process of creating what they're calling extended learning areas. And for those of you who understand, they've got 4 first grade classrooms. Each of the first grade classrooms connect to what is going to be an extended learning area. That learning area is intentionally going to be built to not look like a classroom. This can't look like desks and rows or tables and pods and chairs, whatever that is. And one of the difficult things that we've had when we talk with architects is, how do you get student voice into the conversation with your K-5 kids? They lack gross and fine motor skills to be able to take and draw pretty pictures. To then get their ideas from their heads onto a piece of paper. And so we ran a really cool series with them, and we did a design thinking process. I worked with the leadership of the district and the teachers in front and said, let's walk these kids through a process where we really listen to them. And then can we use AI to take their ideas and turn it into something that they can see? And so we did that. I was able to work with GMB, the architect firm that's working with Holland Public Schools, and we co-facilitated a conversation, and I led that, and we put up pictures of what different flexible learning spaces could look like. So we gave kids an idea of what those might be. We had them do a gallery walk. They took notes around what are the things that they like, what don't they like. As you'll see on the top of that right of that slide, this was a first grade one where we cut out some of those pictures for them, because even first graders have a hard time drawing, a comfy chair, or they wanted to have something where a lot of the kids wanted a gathering space, and they could talk to you about it, but they just don't have the language, the written language, or the design, the drawing ability to be able to give you something. And so we let them create this. Then I took all of that data, I synthesized it into a spreadsheet and looked at the number of things. We talked also about not just would you like to see in that space, but is there a theme that we might theme around the learning? And you'll see down in the bottom left-hand corner, they came up with some pretty cool designs. We're here in West Michigan. Holland has Holland State Park, and Big Red is the lighthouse that is there, and the kids love going to the beach. They love seeing that. And so they created a space with a standalone structure inside of it that would be the lighthouse. The teachers saw that image and said, we can't have sand in our classrooms. And we said, yes, but we're not starting with that. We started with what do kids really want? And we can then build things with sand colored carpet and watercolored carpet. We can make the environment feel, but kids wanted to feel like they were somewhere else other than a school. And so we were able to give them these things. And one of the things that I really loved about the elementary we were in is that it holds a number of center-based programs. And those center-based programs, we had deaf and hard of hearing students, we had blind students, and every single one of those kids through the process was able to give us input. And we made designs for each of these kids. And one of the things that you'll see in the picture on the bottom right, it was the first time I had sat with an interpreter who was signing throughout the presentation, throughout my lesson with the kids. But then AI was the thing that took those kids' ideas and turned it into reality. And when we would type in the prompt of what they wanted to see, and then AI, ChatGPT made a picture, you'll see those down in the bottom left-hand corner, the oohs and the ahs and the, oh, I want to learn in that space. It was just absolutely amazing. And so, when we think about, yes, there's a lot of, traditional things that AI can do. It can help us write lesson plans. It can help us differentiate. It can help us score and give feedback to students. But this was one that was really empowering and impactful for kids, because we gave them something that up until this point we hadn't been able to do. And then just this last week, Holland Public did a town hall for parents to come in and look at their plans for what's going to be these learning spaces, and the number of comments that we received on, oh my word, you actually listened to my kids, and now they're going to go build them, right? And I looked at GMB and Holland, I said, you guys have opened the door, now you have to deliver. And they're excited to deliver on that. But it's some stuff that AI just empowered us in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. So I was really pleased with that. And the last thing that I'll share, just because we're getting short on time, is, we've developed an artificial intelligence course that is offered through EduPaths that we're putting out, and it's a foundational series. We're going to have a series of other professional development that our team is building and rolling out. But wherever the journey is, I think one of the things that we have to start to acknowledge is this isn't going away. That toothpaste isn't going back in the tube, and we have to start to think about, what does that mean for our learners, and how do we make sure that AI doesn't take the productive struggle away from our learners? It keeps that productive struggle there. But are there things inside of an assignment or a learning task that AI could empower our students and our learners to be able to use, so that they can show up in a way that maybe they haven't shown up in before? And the last thing that I'll say is, one of the things that I've been doing, I stole this from Common Sense Media, but they have a framework, and you'll see that on the right-hand side, of ethical use in your classroom. And it's a real simple 4-step way for teachers and students. And this is really kind of for middle school, high school. But how do you co-develop ethical use guidelines with your students? And it's a prompting series where you use ChatGPT or Claude or any of those large language models, and the student and the teacher sit side by side, and they wrestle with the conversation of, where is it appropriate or not appropriate for us to use AI? And one of the things that I like about this is it puts the teacher with the student shoulder to shoulder. And it's not about the teacher saying what a kid can or can't do. It's about wrestling with the conversation about, what is the learning, and how might we use this in a way that's ethical and productive? And it changes the dynamic of the conversation. And so in all of the AI kind of 201 series that I'm running, this is one of the prompts and one of the things that we've been doing with teachers. And I've been just really impressed with the feedback that we've seen from those who have used it. And this will maybe be the most outlandish thing that I've said, or the thing where I'll jump up my soapbox for a minute. For any of you know who I am, I don't have a problem doing that most of the time. But if we are not clearly defining what is okay for students to do with AI, I don't believe we're doing our job, because it's the wild, wild west. And I would say this, and I had it happen with my own child. They used AI as part of an assignment. I looked at what she did. She met all of the standards in the rubric, and then part of her showing her knowledge, she used AI to draw some pictures, because she struggles. She doesn't see herself as an artist, and she didn't want to go cut and paste pictures from the web. And so she created AI images, and then she failed the assignment. And we sat down and talked with a teacher, and we unpacked what it was. It was a great learning opportunity for myself and for my daughter and for the teacher. But one of the things I said was, you didn't clearly define for her what she could or could not do. But now you're going to give her a 0 because she did something that on the back end you're saying is cheating. If we don't clearly define the rules for our learners, then we are putting them in an unfair position. And I think we have to be very clear about what they can and can't do when we are asking them to do certain things, because whether we like it or not, kids are using it all the time and they know how to use it. If we aren't using it in our spaces, if we aren't clearly defining that, I think that's an equity gap for us. I think we create more haves and have-nots if we're locking it down inside of our schools and not giving them access and not giving them the support they need. We're going to create a divide when it comes to the ability to use AI as a tool to enhance our learning. So with that, I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Justin.
Thank you so much to all three of our panelists, presenters. I'm going to put my slides back up here, and I want to encourage folks to ask questions in the chat or through the Q&A tool. While we kind of wait, we have about 15 minutes left. So I've got some questions that I want to throw out and think about how our participants can maybe connect some dots for us today. But as I think about, the purpose of National AI Literacy Day, it's helping people define this question of what is AI. And the through line I see between all three of you, or the three of the work of all three of you, is like learning about AI through application, right? You can't really just kind of be told and lectured at about what AI is. You really, to get a full sense of it, you have to have students, staff, anybody like sit down, try it, understand it. And Dave, you made this point about, there's some really obvious low-hanging fruit that a lot of hype has been made around AI, around like lesson planning and things like that. But my question is coming back to this idea of like misconceptions. So how do you I'll start with Andrea, and then we can kind of just open it up to the whole group. But what sort of misconceptions do you hear among students or among the staff that you're working with around AI? And then how do you kind of help them get through those misconceptions through that application? And what does that kind of learning process look like?
Yeah, I'd say the largest misconceptions is how it came to be. I think understanding that there's training data behind what we're seeing on the screen, that what it's doing is basically statistical analysis and predictive analysis of what it expects the next word to be. We used to play this game, Lauren Villaluz, I don't know if she's here, but we used to play this game where we would say like peanut butter and then someone else would say jelly, to practice playing around with how AI works. And when you know that there's training data involved, then you can start to move towards more of the ethical issues and also the size of the training. These are large language models, which has really increased the environmental impact, which Michelle alluded to as well. And so having some of the ways that the sausage is made and naming that for folks, I think becomes really important, because it's really, I want to be clear, it's not making art, it's generating images. It is not writing, it is generating text. And I think one of the biggest things in terms of, like, to echo what Dave was saying about if teachers aren't clear about what they're asking kids to do and where AI might fit into that, I also want to suggest back to Joseph Asano's poem, are we asking students to do meaningful work in the first place? Because as a former English teacher, there was a lot of text generation that kids were being asked to do, and that I asked kids to do, that wasn't meaningful work, which is how I ended up where I am now with project-based learning and universal design for learning, is really thinking about meaningful, authentic work and meaningful, authentic tasks like Michelle and Dave talked about, and what we're trying to do with our project-based learning unit. These are differences that we need to articulate for our kids, because a lot of times if I'm turning to AI when I shouldn't, that's just a motivational strategy to take an efficiency shortcut, because I do not value the work. If you've ever watched a kid put a TikTok dance up, they'll redo it 87 times. Why? When they could be generating that with AI right now, but they don't, because there's something about, and back to circle back, this is a community civic engagement. We're communicating something, and are we doing something meaningful with their wild and precious life. It's really, really important that we're giving them meaningful work. And so through all of those conversations, then we can articulate those misconceptions about AI, that this isn't just a magic quote unquote tool to do things we don't want to do, that this is a much larger conversation that touches a lot of other issues in our communities.
Michelle or Dave, anything to add on that misconceptions conversation?
I would just say, thinking of like the student side, especially, wait, because you know, in movies and things, they think AI is going to take over the world, replace relationships, replace workers, and just really take over. And so, really sharing with them some AI literacy so they understand how in control they are. And I talked recently with some middle schoolers and high schoolers about social media and how teachers shied away. We just didn't address it. And so students learned how to navigate it on their own and how do they feel about it? And I said, I don't want that to happen with AI. Like, what do you guys think? And they actually really do have some things they want to avoid that are bad things and some things they want to do that are good things. And they shared like what they want adults to help them with. But as we have more talks together, it kind of helps them understand we are in control of this AI, right? We're the humans. Everything it does is because humans told it to do so. And so, how can we do that to make the world a better place? And the movies don't really show a lot of that. So we are combating some of the media culture there on that.
Yeah, I would echo what both of them said. I think, you know, the misconceptions are a key because there's a lot of our teachers are not embracing something that could help them save time. And I always talk in all of my presentations, this is not like start with the things that are taking your time so that you can spend more time shoulder to shoulder and knee to knee with your learners, right? This is a tool that can take some things off of your plate that is for you low level, low hanging fruit. And when you lean into that and start wherever it is that you are, there's no bad place to start. It's let's start to have the conversation. And it starts with understanding what machine intelligence is, right? And I've started to try to make sure that I don't call it artificial intelligence because there's nothing artificial about what it's creating real tangible things. It's a machine intelligence. And then using some examples of ways that we're using it all of the time, right? We've been using machine intelligence, machine learning forever and ever. And I use the example of, you know, we spend way more money on Amazon than I ever wanted to because my wife buys something and then it says other people have also bought this and it pops up and everybody goes, oh yeah, I've seen that. Well, that's machine intelligence, right? You're okay with it in a number of ways that make your life easier. What does that look like when we translate it into the classroom? And always keeping that human in the loop so that we're in the driver's seat and we're not turning things over, you know, blindly to the AI.
Thanks, Dave. I see a question from Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Are any of you connecting AI literacy back to the MyTex or the computer science standards?
Yeah, at Avondale, so our high school CTE team went to the ACTE in San Antonio conference and really just thinking about the competencies that can align with AI literacy, like digital citizenship, data analysis, and problem solving. Um, they are using AI pretty heavily. I team with them a lot. And so just making sure to continue on with professional development with different tools that they can use within their classrooms that can merge those things together. So it's very new. I mean, this is work that that team has started this school year, primarily a little bit last year, but we would love to collaborate if you want to ever jump on a Zoom and share. I'm sure you have some great ideas or some, if the best thing I find is when someone shares a struggle, because it's a struggle we might not even know we also have. So working with people who are just getting started has probably been one of the most beneficial things because no matter what, it's always illuminating. So please feel free to reach out, and my team loves to share the things that they're doing.
So we have not tied those back yet, but I think that's a good question and something that we should probably take a look at on our end.
I'll just say for the PBL unit right now, it is secretly in there because I did invite the teachers in the unit that they're piloting to engage with some different computer science concepts, but I don't want to overwhelm my English teachers either. So it's always this delicate balance. but I think everybody should have some understanding of what an algorithm is and what that means. And uh, my favorite question I used to ask when I was in more tech land, I used to always ask, well, how does the internet work and how is it different from the World Wide Web? And you would just see people's eyes get really huge. And I worry that we're having the same kind of effect with generative AI. It's so easy to play with. It reminds me of the shift when we all got iPads and iPhones. Prior to that, we were all learning HTML and we were learning to code and all this stuff. And then the iPhones and iDevices came out, and it was so easy to create things that we didn't need to have all of that coding background. And we lost some of those literacies. A way to be critically evaluative of what's coming up in AI generated text or images is to understand how that came to be. And there's still such a black box around it, even for the creators, that I think it's worth exploring with kids and teachers as we continue to work with it, rather than saying, okay, this is how you prompt it, that we're also critically engaging with what the output is.
Thank you. Got about 5 minutes left. I want to share kind of just a thought and then see if our panelists have some reactions to it before you wrap. But, you know, I think we're still very much taking small steps in this area because it is a general purpose technology. There are huge implications and impacts with regard to what it can do and how people will use it. And this term that has been tumbling around in my head a lot lately has been this idea of like necessary but not sufficient. So if you were at McCall last week, you probably saw Saba Kidwai, Dr. Saba Kidwai, in her closing keynote, and she shares this a lot in her um, posts and work around AI. This idea that, are we falling into a false sense of comfort when we adopt our stoplight policy, or when we um, come up with, or if we decide to purchase Magic School, like, and get a site-wide license for an AI tool that's really popular, right? Like, do we feel like we're checking that box and we're ignoring the larger implications about how AI will, or how education will change or should change in response to AI? And I'm just curious about how you think about that in your work, or how you get folks to maybe think about a little bit from a bigger picture. Michelle, you talked about this idea of a transparency chart as opposed to kind of a stoplight, because ultimately, like, students, and I've heard this through all of your presentations, we want students to make good choices. We don't want to put like a ton of barriers around, and knowing that we really can't enforce a lot of barriers around their use of the technology when they're outside of the walls of our schools, right? So how do we think about what's kind of necessary but not yet sufficient when it comes to embracing the full scope of the change that this is going to bring in education? Anybody have any thoughts to share on that?
I would love to just share the student perspective because when we looked at some tools, the traffic light system was the one the students liked the best because they were saying, we just want to make sure we know exactly. And they were like, we would understand this. If teacher said color, we would understand this. And it was the keynote speech that made me come back, and the people who would spend time to talk about, like, maybe we don't call it a traffic light. And so reaching back out to those students, like, but they want clarity. And I do think, like, it's very helpful to anyone leading this to say everything's like in an evolutionary state. Like, so this is what we're doing right now. We're always going to be open to evolving as we go together, because there's no such thing as like, oops, we used a traffic light system and we made a mistake and that's embarrassing. Heck no, that paved the way to evolve into something that maybe feels a little less like restrictive. So it's okay to just try something, because it's better than trying nothing, for transparency. And then as you get feedback by using it and say, you know what, next year we're going to remodel this a little bit to add some clarity. You can't change it every month, but hey, we're going to make mistakes. But you're never boxed in unless you tell people, here's our policy for the next 10 years. So it's okay to just evolve, is what I would say, and listen to students. And they like the clarity, but they are definitely more imaginative than I am when it comes to what the model looks like. And images do portray a feeling. So the traffic light, I understood what the keynote was saying there. And some of you here, I can see that were there at McCall, about that feeling of like students aren't cars. But at the same time, students didn't mind the traffic light system. So just staying evolutionary and not boxing ourselves in, using language that talks about things and being in a state of somewhat constant change, but together. We're in this together. We're going to get through it together.
Yeah, to echo Michelle, I would just say that when you think about how a community norms around a technology or a way of interacting with each other, that takes a little bit of friction first. And so we talk about forming, storming, and norming and performing and thinking about groups, but there is a storming moment. And I think about uh, when I was a kid, you used to be able to go visit a friend and like knock on their door. Now that the community has normed away from that, you have to text first. People even text before they call each other now. These are norms, these are community norms we developed around the technologies that we're interacting with all the time. And we have to do that negotiation with each other. And you can't always anticipate what's going to be okay for every individual. There, it's never going to be that way. So while I think thinking of a traffic light system or any, however you define it, it's always going to have affordances and constraints. And what it comes down to is keeping the humanity and the way that we learn how to be with each other, even with technology in our spaces. That's going to be where the answers lie.
Yeah, I would double down on what both Andrea and Michelle said. And I think the other thing is, I think one of the things that we've missed as we've started this is, we put a lot of focus into teachers understanding what it is. And we really need to make sure that our kids understand what it is, right? It's one thing for them to understand how to navigate a stoplight or a system like that. It's another thing for them to understand the why behind the reason that the light is there. And that's a sticky, hard conversation that we need to have. And I liken it somewhat to, we're giving kids cell phones at earlier and early ages, right? Because it's an ease thing to keep them busy, or you can sit at dinner and they can do something and they're not interrupting you. And then we let them load apps on there, but we don't talk to them about why it is that they're spending so much time on TikTok and Instagram, right? It's the dopamine hits that they're getting, all of the things that, how is this technology interacting with the development of your brain? And we say, well, so kids can't understand that. They can. We need to have a conversation with our learners so that they understand the power that they're being given. We don't turn over a car to a kid without teaching them how to drive. Yet these tools, because they're so easily available, are just things that they're putting into their toolkit. And I'll end with, I had an aha moment with my daughter, who was so happy to send me her English paper that she wanted me to proof and read. And she was so happy that she said, Dad, I didn't use AI at all. I wanted this to be my voice. Will you read this? And it was a point of pride for her to be able to say she didn't use AI, but she's starting to realize now as a high school junior that she's hacking the system and that she's not developing the muscle that I want her to develop when it comes to being a writer. And so we have to have that, we have to pair that into this conversation. It's one thing for our teachers to know. And I think foundationally, we have to be talking with our kids about what it is and why it's doing what it's doing, or they're going to have, learning muscles that are going to atrophy over time because they are turning that over to something other than themselves.
Thank you, Dave. Well put. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, and just one final thought on that, that hard, sticky conversation you mentioned. I think what folks will hopefully come to realize is that there's opportunity in that conversation, right? Like there's opportunity for a teacher or someone who's facilitating learning to get really clear about the choices they've made for that learning, right? Why I don't think you should be allowed to use this technology for X or Y reason. And then on the flip side of that, there's an opportunity for a student to voice their kind of concerns and their preferences. I think I should be allowed to use this technology for X or Y reason because I'm using it in a way that I think can still help me learn what I'm trying to learn. So how do we keep those two in dialogue? That's going to be a long like you said, sticky conversation. I know we're over time. Just a couple last things to share. If you are interested in some of our own Michigan Virtuals AI literacy resources, we have lesson plans. We have short minute and a half or so videos just explaining what AI is in the language of a student. So you can find all that work, all those resources at michiganvirtual.org/AI literacy. And there is a paywall on the lesson plans, the full lesson plans that do include chatbots developed in-house by us using school AI that kind of accompany the learning about AI. There's a paywall there, but if you're interested, there's a promo code that allows you to bypass that paywall. That promo code is literacy. And then my contact information is here. And if our panelists, I think I saw Michelle already put her contact information, but if you're interested in getting in touch with any of our presenters or panelists, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. Feel free to learn more about what we are doing at Michigan Virtual and all around the state, but I'm just really proud of the innovative work here happening in Michigan, and I'm glad we could showcase it for you all today. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and take care, everyone.